Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of What's the Buzz? Today, I'm very excited and privileged to be joined by Evan Edwards, who is the new CEO, right, Evan, at Kymanox. Evan, welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks, Chris. And yeah, I took over as CEO last week for Kymanox. I've been with the company now for over 5 years. Very blessed and privileged to take on this new responsibility. Very thankful to Stephen, who is now executive chairman of the board, for his trust and his leadership building up this company over 20 years now. So it's an exciting time for me, for the company, and I'm very thankful to be a part of this today.
Well, it's definitely an exciting time in the industry, and I'm excited to dig in with you today, Evan, about some of what you're seeing, and now we'll be tackling as the new CEO there at Kymanox. So before we dig in, let me take care of a little bit of housekeeping. So today's conversation is going to be all about speed to market in life sciences, where we'll be talking about and covering how to leverage capital efficiently, common execution gaps holding companies back, what industry leaders can do to make speed to market and speed to project also a true advantage. And of course, we can't have a podcast these days without talking about AI, so I'm sure we're going to drop that in there. And again, a special thank you to Heffron. Heffron's our sponsor all year long for these podcasts, and a true ecosystem builder and partner for us. For over 104 years, they've been a top mechanical construction and services partner for the life science industry. From taking a leading role in building like iconic facilities like the Human Genome Sciences building in Maryland to countless other biopharma projects across the Mid-Atlantic. Heffron's commitment to quality, safety, and seeing projects through have really made them one of the most trusted partners in the industry, and we couldn't be more grateful for their support. So thank you to Heffron for all you do for the community and for us. So Evan, and for those tuning in, What's Buzz is really all about talking about ecosystem builders, and we use that a little broadly, because life sciences is built on partnerships, right? It's built on this kind of village that it takes to bring new devices and new products to market. So we want to celebrate the people that are convening and bringing people together and providing solutions and providing opportunities that help not just their company, but multiple companies grow. And I think Kymanox has always been, I think, an ecosystem builder, a convener, a knowledge source for many companies. So I'm excited to dive in today and talk about a topic which I think is on a lot of people's minds. So Evan, before we dive in, can you tell our audience a little bit about you and your background and kind of what you're seeing in the market in this new role?
Yeah. So I actually have a unique background. Before Kymanox, I started a company with my identical twin brother called Kaleo Pharma. Spent 17 years building that company up. Was co-inventor of a product called AviQ, which was a competitor to EpiPen. Built that up. Did an infant dose of that product, naloxone auto-injector, which was the first out-of-hospital indication for naloxone before Narcan became very popular and over-the-counter now, and then did a DoD auto-injector as well. So I have a lot of experience in drug device combination products. I'm also very passionate about supporting startups since I was an entrepreneur and building companies and helping those companies thrive. I'm on the board of Siebel Biohub here in Charlottesville, Virginia, and I've supported First Flight in North Carolina. And I think that you kind of alluded to it, Chris, is it's all about collaboration and helping one another, supporting one another in this ecosystem. And I'm very, blessed to have seen a lot of different things since my tenure at Kymanox, with working with some of the largest pharma and biotech companies in the world, all the way down to, 3 gals or guys in a molecule, and they're trying to figure out how to work through this and get to their next value inflection point. So it's great to be in this industry. I love being in professional services just because we get to work with so many different people. But I definitely have a heart for smaller companies and trying to help them navigate the complexities of developing med tech and pharma, especially combination products. Yeah.
You bring a really unique perspective, Evan, and what you just brought up. I'm curious, what do you see, like, how do you see the industry has changed from you were a developer, right? You built and produced and commercialized products. what do you see now in comparing kind of the two lenses from, yesterday when you were doing it and, to kind of what you're seeing work with the companies today?
Yeah, it's a great point, and a great question. I think what we see, and I think our audience, and I appreciate everyone spending their time, their lunch hour with us on the East Coast in particular. It's capital. A lot of it is capital and risk is what we see. So as it's no surprise, people have struggled to raise capital. There's a lot of dry powder out there, but I think when you look at uncertainty in the industry, I think last year JPM, people are like, things are going to turn around, and we are seeing companies that have already established products looking on follow-on rounds, say Series C, Series D, big chunks of capital do well. But the startups, the smaller companies, you're trying to raise 1 to, let's say, 10 million. It's tough out there, and it's highly competitive. So we continue to see that. Along with that, we see that strategic partners and individuals that are willing to invest that type of capital want these companies to advance a lot farther than when I was developing a product or when we were earlier stage companies 10 years ago. So almost clinical readiness, you're ready to go, which means that the onus is on the leadership team to advance farther with less. And that's a huge challenge to get to their next value inflection point. That's one of the reasons why we exist as well, is finding the right trusted partners that can get them to that next value inflection point, where you don't have to hire 20 FTEs, right? But you can flex, bring a team in, help support them, allow them to get to that next growth capital, and then come in and support them is really, really important. So we're seeing more virtual companies, trying to play this game and try to advance their programs. And it's still a challenge, but I think there is some momentum where the capital is opening doors. I think it's a balance, Chris, of risk, where there's a lot more risk that the companies have to take now. There's higher expectations on clinical readiness. And even the larger companies, what we're seeing is more capacity constraints, a lot of pricing pressure, Inflationary Reduction Act, so, IRA. We're seeing significant patent cliff for blockbuster assets. I think I read in a report that over 300 billion is what they're estimating through like 2030 of just lost revenue through patent expiry. And that puts a lot of pressure on these large companies for their pipelines to figure out how to do something different.
It's money controls a lot, and you described how both in early stage and even later more commercial companies. Decade or two ago there were virtual companies, but I don't think the same infrastructure existed. I think the industry is more adapt. I mean, maybe this was through COVID, but there used to be you got a new molecule, you'd go raise $50, $100 million, bring a board in from top executives at J&J and Bristol Myers and Pfizer, and launch a big board, big executive team, and go raise more money and start moving your product forward. I feel like now it's such a leaner game, and I think even the systems are built for that. So that's a big part of speed, right? Being lean, being agile. Can you talk a little bit about what differentiates Kymanox and how you're situated where you can be able to be that kind of lean partner that can plug in at these stages? Because I got to imagine there's a lot of different components that companies need, especially in a group like you, the global services firm. So can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, happy. I think you hit the nail on the head. It's just different with companies now, given what I just alluded to on costs and pricing pressures. I think there's a lot of reliance on not only internal talent, but how do you bring in the right expertise? So we've all seen, like Fierce has done layoff trackers, and you see people cutting costs, yet you also see a significant amount of investment going back into companies to try to figure out what they're going to do about their pipeline and fill these gaps. So speed becomes critical, and with speed means you need to have the right structure, the right governance, program management, integration. So there's kind of a tale of two coins, I think I see, Chris. With the small companies, I mentioned that they're overly reliant on trying to make sure they have the right experts come in, resolve their issues, help them with development roadmaps, help them with gap assessments, and build, I'd say, the right size model, whether it's a QMS or program to help them get that next level of funding. And we do that all the time for sponsors. For large companies, capacity. And we see capacity challenges where it's not like they canceled a bunch of programs. They're just looking for cost savings. So they'll look to companies like us and other partners to come in and execute very, very quickly. We see that it's not like, even though I think I read in a report that college graduates are highest level in biologics now coming out of college, but you see CG&T, you see manufacturing, bioprocessing, advanced modalities, complex therapies, AI, which we'll talk about, and things like that. They don't have that experience. So they're looking for subject matter experts that can come in and make an impact. I mentioned drug device combination products. We have a lot of companies. A large percentage of our work these are companies that may have a product in a vial and a syringe. They have strong CMC, drug and biologic experience, and then they see, okay, hey, we want to take this to the home. We want to bring this to the end user in a home setting, and therefore they go into a pre-filled syringe, they go into an auto-injector, nasal delivery device, but they don't understand or have the device expertise at hand and in their organizations. And that's throughout not just device engineering, but quality, CMC support, regulatory. How do you deal with those strategies, clinical development, and an intersection of that complexity of both drug, biologic, and device causes a lot of speed challenges if you don't have the right people on board. So we're seeing a lot of companies come to us and other partners like Kymanox in order to resolve that and be a part and basically be an extension of their team to accelerate their program. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting how you bring up the layoff tracker and stuff. A lot of people, I think, from the outside, they see all these layoffs and they think, like programs are getting canceled and whole catalogs are getting put on the shelf. But like a lot of it is just resizing.
Yeah,
priorities. And I kind of, what I kind of think about, Evan, is like, we talk about speed to market, but there's also this speed of change happening, right? So there's new technologies and new delivery abilities coming to market. Technology and automation is moving new things into the commercial biopharma. AI is moving. So in order to continue to meet that speed to market, you need, I'm seeing how companies kind of need flexibility to be able to kind of, just in time bring in expertise, because things are changing so fast and what companies can do and can accomplish, right? I mean, do you see that? Is that?
I think you're mentioning a topic that we see a lot, which is the lack of embracing change, leading to the ability to not accelerate programs. And part of this is for large companies, we see silos. I mean, it's no surprise probably to the listeners on this call. You have really large med tech, biotech, pharma companies. Some of them are in different sites. They have departments in different areas. They don't even know each other. And there's a lot of challenges on communication and that integration. Because of the pitfalls for lost revenue in the future, there's heavy M&A activity. With M&A, you bring in another company, you have to integrate that company into your organization. So you have culture challenges, you have compliance challenges, quality system challenges. How do you make sure that you can accelerate their programs and make that successful based on the investment the leadership has made into those companies? I think legacy, it can be a challenge, and we've seen it. And obviously not going to name any names of sponsors or clients, but sometimes you have individuals who've been at companies for 10, 20, 30 years. And that's really hard to change behavior when some of these individuals this is what's worked for me in my career. Why do I want to change? And I think it's really, really important that, and the ones that we see that are winning are the ones that are embracing change. And I think that's the theme. They're the ones that are willing to bring in outside perspectives, new subject matter experts. What is the latest knowledge, guidance out there, best practices, know-how that we can incorporate into our company internally? How do you upskill our employees? And you kind of mentioned AI. That's the buzzword, the shiny object that people keep talking about. And that's becoming very real, Chris. And I think a year ago, I'd say it's still people really hesitant on it. I don't know how much I can trust this. We are now seeing at Kymanox sponsors coming to us and saying, hey, we want you to use AI as a part of your solution architecture for these programs. And they are embracing it. And with that comes responsible use of AI, security, cybersecurity, data integrity. How do you manage through these things together? And we lean into it. We are absolutely leaning into it. We want our talent to be prepared for that. We have a AI Center of Excellence. We've been working on that for over 2 years now, and now we're just now seeing. We've done a lot of internal stuff. We're just now seeing sponsors say, "Hey, you know what? Like, we would be open to our partners using AI, embracing AI, and some of them are requiring it for us moving forward." And you have to change. You have to adapt quickly in order to do that. For larger companies, it is hard. It's like moving the Titanic. But for smaller, mid-sized, more nimble companies where you have leadership at a level that embraces technology, they're winning, and they're going to continue to outpace their competition as they continue to embrace technology in particular.
Yeah, and there's a big prize for winning, right? You mentioned the patent cliffs that are out there. There's, so winning in today's market and speed is important. I also always feel like I have to bring up the elephant in the room with China. I mean, there's, we have to redefine speed in the U.S. if we're going to compete globally. I believe that. I hear that from our clients, and so it sounds like that's a big theme that not on the China thing, but helping clients achieve their potential is a big theme that you're embracing at Kymanox.
Yeah, and I mean, there's also the elephant in the room of the administration and complexity, uncertainty, and divisiveness, and the overall macro environment. But you also are seeing like the FDA make strides on trying to figure out how they can streamline development pathways, accelerate regulatory approvals, make things easier from a clinical trial perspective. And I think that the industry is embracing that and getting excited about that. Voucher programs, like really rapid, crazy things that are putting companies, sponsors and CDMOs and others in a position to be successful. We see huge onshoring effort, right, with manufacturing, and that's exciting. I think that brings a lot of jobs, so big impact on economic development. But you have to have the talent to be able to implement that. How do you raise up a site and be successful? And we're seeing a lot of growth in our manufacturing services and facilities for that reason. I think the big thing, we start at the beginning of this conversation, is the financial impact of it. And sometimes when you're on development and R&D, they don't have the full connection from the commercial team of what exactly is the impact. And there's pressure, and they're telling them, hey, we got to move faster. But they're not telling them and bridging the gap on why. And I read a report from the Tufts Center of Drug Development. They did a study, and for drug products and biologic products for development, every single day delay, this is a crazy stat, but it won't surprise our audience, is $800,000. Every single day delay of a product not getting onto the market, missing their PDUFA date or a CRL. And for I'd say more complex modalities, when you look at like disease states like oncology and cardiovascular and immunology, it's over $1 million a day. So, and then people say, well, gosh, I don't know if I want to, conduct this extra study, or I don't know if I want to do, parallel paths and risk mitigation of different products on stability. Like, okay, you're talking about something that may cost $100,000, and if you don't have a solution, we know and we've seen that problems that occur later in the development program are disastrous and lead to significant delays. And most importantly, that impact, you get a non-approval or a CRL, that's a big issue, and it's very costly, and a lot of pressure from the commercial team. So I just find these stats crazy, and I think it's hard sometimes for the procurement people to recognize that, penny wise, pound foolish. If we don't pay for risk management and ensure additional quality and backup plans and parallel paths, and we're just really setting our sights on this one product idea, this one development pathway, it could really shoot them in the foot later down the road.
Yeah. That's incredible. I mean, I think, risk management is critical in life sciences and biopharma, but I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, a lot of people you're not thinking about that earlier in the process. But I mean, you guys have worked with dozens of programs, dozens of product launches. So you've got the foresight to be able to see what a lot of people, again, you brought legacy up earlier. A lot of people just don't have the foresight because they've been at the same company, they've often the same department or role. They just don't see that. They don't see the full picture like what you're seeing.
And it's not, I mean, it's not, I think of it as, it's not about the science. Like, these are really talented people at companies. The science is strong. It's about capability and willingness to adapt, willingness to embrace, quality as a strategic offering, and speed as a strategy and not an operational benefit. I was thinking about, you just made me think about an example recently where we had a sponsor that, I'm a big human factors guy, so I taught human factors at Amy for 10 years as well, and built a human factors group at Kymanox. And it's crazy to me sometimes we get companies coming to us and they're like, yeah, we don't really feel like we need to conduct that extra study, or they don't get an outside perspective from a regulatory HS strategy. We had a sponsor that we were reviewing. We saw that their validation study was not well executed and had significant risks for the user interface. We communicated those risks to the sponsor. They're like, we're still good, we're going to file. And we said, hey, look, highly likely you're going to get a CRL tied to this. And they said, okay, we're still going to move forward. 3 months later, got a CRL, called us back. Hey, we need to resolve that. And like, if you think about it, they just would have taken the extra time to mitigate something that maybe in their perspective, some leaders think not a big deal. It's just a user interface, it's instructions for use. Our drug, our clinical data, our endpoints are sound. There's no way they're going to give us CRL over something as simple in their mind, right? Perceived as being, a device constituent issue or instructions for use. We see it time and time again. So I think it is embracing that expertise and trying not to always lean back on what you thought worked well in the past.
Yeah. What I heard there, Evan, is almost like sometimes you have to do what you perceive as slowing down to speed up.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, because in the moment it may be difficult to embrace, but in the long term, knowing the risk, and I do think it is a risk benefit analysis on some of these things, right? There are, especially for smaller company, there's capital constraints. They have to figure out where they're going to spend their dollars and where to make the biggest impact. And you do have to do that risk-based analysis on, hey, this is going to give us the biggest bang for our buck. This is going to mitigate the biggest business risk, commercial risk if we do these things. So I'm not just telling everyone, on the call, hey, go spend a ton of money on a lot of different options. They need to really think through and focus on those things that are urgent versus important. But we have seen where poor planning, in particular, poor program management, and a lack of willingness, I'll say, to embrace other outside individuals has impacted, or subject matter experts have impacted their program.
Evan, I want to pivot a little bit and kind of take another track. It's related, but I'm just curious. You mentioned large companies. We talked about some of the larger programs. I know your passion is for helping emerging companies come out. For a startup or a company listening to it, like, what are the kind of inflection points, or when should a founder be like, this is a time where I have to start planning for speed, or this is a time where I can look at I've got a fork in the road. Here's 2 models I could take. I don't know if that's too binary of a thing to be able to identify.
No, I don't think it's binary. I mean, I think they should always be thinking earlier the better, to think about I'll use the term maximum optionality. They need to make sure that they are ready to pivot. Now, that does not mean that they have to invest in those pivots, but they have to be aware of the options available to them on roadmaps. And they have to have those individuals, whether it's a development partner, a CDMO, regulatory, that say, hey, this is what could happen. Here's the risks if you go down this path. If this happens, then you may have to pivot and go down this direction. And if they plan for that, then their capital raise is also going to think about that. And I see a lot of decks, Chris, and I know you do too. And they're like use of funds, like management team, like regulatory, quality build, product development, some intellectual property. and supply chain assessment, but then they get to a point where they haven't thought about risk management. Like, how do I make sure that if these things fail, I'm not going back to the investor pool and saying, hey, we burnt through the cash, we had a engineering stability failure, we have to redo our entire formulation, I need another $500,000. That's a huge challenge. But if they bake it in and somehow put them in a position where they can make that decision after they get data, and that's really kind of what I'll say is trying to get them to a point where they have some data to make informed decisions. Obviously, you want to get to a position where you can sit down with the agency and get more certainty on your development program and have that roadmap. But baking in that risk earlier, I think, is very important. At least being knowledgeable of what could happen, what things could go wrong, and making sure your team's aligned with what the pivot could be.
Yeah, I like that phrase, maximum optionality. So when you think about those options, one of those options is, your management team and build out, right? But you all have a unique offering as well. You call it a hyper virtual model, right? So some of those options that can be helpful for speed and for funding too, if I'm not mistaken, is this idea of virtual model, right? So I think you said in the beginning, you've worked with companies down to like one founder, one molecule, and plus Kymanox. Could you explain what that actually looks like in practice and how that helps with speed?
Sure, yeah, and this was something that our founder and previous CEO, Steven, kind of coined, and he was very passionate about, and I shared that as an entrepreneur, and it's just embracing what we're seeing in the market that you and I talked about. So these companies, and they just need to figure out how to get to that next value inflection point. And in order to raise capital, you need to have a seasoned management team, leadership team, or the expertise around you. We've been kind of using our model. We've been an extension of those companies where we'd be their designated quality authority, their regulatory team. We've actually had some of our functional leaders be fractional leaders in those organizations. And when you're standing up in front of investors and you're pitching, and they're able to put, these individuals that are subject matter experts, have a lot of deep experience, whether it's in regulatory, CMC, drug device combination products, engineering, sterilization, and they can kind of look the investors in the eye and say, hey, yeah, we're a company of 3, but we have an extended team of experts. And with the use of your capital, we're going to be able to get to this next milestone using our partners. It's also for those CDMOs on the call, I think embracing those partnerships early does mitigate risk and adds value to these companies, to these startups and the leadership, to be able to say, hey, we not only have the ability and know-how and the passion and the story behind what we're trying to create to impact patients' lives, but we also have the roadmap, the suppliers, the partner. We understand, we've talked to them. So your capital is going to be, put to good work with individuals that you can trust because they're leaders in this space.
Yeah, trust, a lot of, you talk about this in the beginning, some of the challenges that why companies need to look at speed, it comes down to capital. And capital and a lot of stuff in this industry comes down to trust, right? Like trust is so important in this industry because it does take, $1 billion to bring a therapy to market. It does, like, this is a 10-year, I often joke and say, we're not building the next Candy Crush app. We're building,
right.
We're building a solution that crushes cancer, right? So that, you have to have trusted partners in that type of relationship or in that type of business environment.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you kind of alluded to something. I think we're all fortunate, and I think almost everyone on this call is in life sciences, to work in this industry where we can directly impact patient lives through the work that we do. And that's why there's so much passion with what everyone does, right? And the people we interact with, because we've seen that we are behind the scenes helping programs advance that can impact patients' lives. And so the trust part of it also has to deal with the expertise side of it and quality. They all go hand in hand, because especially if you're in like professional services, or you're a CDMO, or you're a nonprofit helping companies, your reputation's at stake. If you can't provide that subject matter expertise and advance them to the next program, it impacts your reputation. I think quality becomes central theme and a bedrock for all of these companies. And you have to be proactive on quality. I think the leaders that win are the leaders that are proactively embracing quality as a strategic advantage and a competitive advantage versus an afterthought or something that is a checkbox. And I think that directly leads to accelerating programs is embracing quality, which does mean that you may have to invest in that quality, right? And we see that every single day. Lack of quality, compliance issues, redoing, deviations, rework, process issues on the manufacturing floor, all due to maybe the leadership not investing in additional quality and having those the right management team in place. So I think we're fortunate to be in life sciences where we all have a culture where at the end of the day, we feel fulfilled in our careers because we know that we're elevating this industry and impacting ultimately patients, and we're all patients. Chris, you and I are patients. I grew up with severe allergies. That's why I had the passion for inventing an epinephrine auto-injector. That story is everyone's story on this call. There's a reason why we're doing the work that we're doing, and we can't forget that as being the center of why we strive so hard to accelerate these programs. Because yep, I know, I get it. It's a lot of dollars, a lot of revenue potential. But if you have people that are fulfilled in the work that they do every single day, the people that embrace quality, embrace teamwork, embrace that collaboration, all the revenue stuff will come. The programs will be successful.
Yeah, I mean, very well wrapped up, Evan. And you mentioned, $800 million a day for later stage companies that they're losing when, but another way to look at that based on, again, just building off what you talked about is, you save a day, you save a life. So that's another way to look at kind of how high speed is important.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I think just on that topic though is having a central leadership team, and I see this in both large companies, mid and small. You kind of highlight it's about the people and having good collaboration. And one of the things that I think we need to continue to emphasize to our listeners is the talent, is making sure you recruit the right talent, and knowing that you can have trusted partners to fill those talent gaps. And I think that that's really, really crucial for acceleration that will impact the company financially, is being able to do that. We talked about AI a little bit. I think embracing technology, embracing talent, subject matter expertise, and constantly asking yourself, what do I not know that I need to know? That's something I do every single day as a leader at Kymanox. What do I not know that I need to know? And how can I prove and do something different or add value differently than yesterday? What can I do today to add value? And those are the types of things that I think are going to advance this industry. It's making sure people understand that the environment's very different than it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 1 year ago, and understand that if they adapt and are willing to make those changes and put the right people around them, it's going to increase their success for sure.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Evan, I appreciate all the insights today and the conversation with you. This has really been great and insightful. I'm sure we had a lot of people nodding and taking some really good things away. I mean, you really summarized it really strongly at the end there. The three things I wrote down that you were talking about is embracing quality means embracing speed, embracing technology, and embracing talent. Those seem to be three things that you're leading not only Kymanox but your clients and partners towards.
Yeah, I think that's right. What are we done? I could talk to you for another hour.
I know we could. I wish I could, but yeah, I think we should let people get back to their lunches if they haven't kept eating. But I agree. Well, we should do it again, regardless. Would be great to continue this conversation. I feel like we could take any one of these topics and dive into for 30 minutes.
Yeah, and let me just thank again everyone who has listened to Chris and I chat a little bit on this, and hopefully some of the topics resonate for you all. And really appreciate your time today on the lunch hour, and hope everyone has a great rest of your Thursday and wonderful weekend.
Well, thank you, Evan, and for everybody tuning in. We'll include a recap in the next week's newsletter. And any questions you have for Evan, leave comments on the LinkedIn page here below. And we'll provide any additional links that we talked about today for everybody. So again, I want to thank Evan Edwards, CEO of Kymanox, for joining me today, and for all of you to tune in. And I hope you will tune in next week for our next episode of What's the Buzz. So Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
Chris. Appreciate it.
All right.